That night, in the crystal-lit dining room of that luxury Austin hotel, my stepmother threw a metal napkin ring. It hit my wrist, a small lesson during a family dinner with 40 guests. No one spoke. My grandfather just stood up, wordlessly, and left the room. I thought it was helplessness. Turns out, it was the opening move in a game they did not know had started, and their most important night, in front of 500 people, would be when I flipped the board. My name is Noelle Hart. I am 32 years old. By day, I am a science teacher at a public high school in Austin. I spend my hours trying to make the laws of thermodynamics relevant to teenagers who are more concerned with navigating the social complexities of their lives. I explain concepts of energy transfer, of potential and kinetic, of equal and opposite reactions. Most days, it feels like I am just trying to keep their heads above water in a system that is underfunded and overwhelmed. But my real work, the work that defines me, happens after the last bell. I am the founder and director of Forge Pathways. It is an after-school STEM program that I built from scratch for low-income students. The kids who live in the zip codes that are being rapidly gentrified out of existence. We operate out of borrowed community center rooms and church basements. I teach them coding, robotics, and applied engineering. Using donated equipment and sheer willpower, I teach them that their minds are the most valuable resource this city has, even if the city does not know it yet. This work places me in direct opposition to the world my family inhabits, or rather, the family I'm connected to by blood, but not by spirit. They are the Everharts. My biological father is Graham Everhart. He is the CEO of Everhart Meridian Holdings, a vast real estate empire that is currently carving up Austin into luxury high-rises and exclusive commercial districts. My mother, his first wife, passed away when I was a child. His second wife, my stepmother Marla, is the true operational head of the family. Though her title is unofficial, she is the chief curator of the Everhart brand. The Everhart home is not a place of comfort. It is a permanent staging area. Every dinner conversation is a strategy meeting. We do not discuss feelings. We discuss acquisitions, zoning changes, and expansion plans. Every social event is calculated for its potential influence. Every relationship is a potential asset or liability. My half-brother, Logan, is the designated heir. He shadows Graham, absorbing his father's ruthless pragmatism, hungry for the vice president title that dangles just out of his reach. He is eager to prove he is cold enough, strategic enough, to lead. He will do anything to earn Graham's approval, which means adopting every one of his father's transactional values. And then there is my grandfather, Edmund Hart. He is my mother's father. He is not an Everhart. He is a quiet, self-made man who built an advanced engineering firm from the ground up and sold it decades ago for a sum the Everharts have never correctly estimated. They treat him with a polite, dismissive patience. They see him as old money, faded and slightly irrelevant. They are profoundly mistaken. He is wealthier than all of them combined, but he lives with a quiet discretion that they mistake for weakness. He is precise, logical, and observant. The Everharts thrive in the new Austin, the one they are helping to build. This city is electric with tech money and the constant thrum of construction. Cranes punctuate the skyline like punctuation marks in a sentence about wealth. Downtown is a glittering canyon of marble-lobbied restaurants and glass towers, where philanthropy is practiced as a competitive sport. This boom is the engine of the Everhart Meridian Holdings, but it is also the force that is displacing the families of my students. The rents rise, the property taxes soar, and the communities that gave this city its soul are pushed further and further to the margins. This is the unseen friction in Austin's gleaming machine. In the Everhart ecosystem, I serve a very specific, unspoken role. I am the invisible daughter. I am the token educator, the harmless, naive one with the community hobby. For the past 5 years, I have been the family's unpaid speechwriter. Everhart Meridian Holdings is a platinum sponsor for half a dozen high-profile charity events every year. It is a crucial part of their image management, and I am the one who provides the words. Noelle, darling, Marla will text me. Never call. We need something moving for the children's hospital benefit. Something about the future. Keep it under 3 minutes. I write the speeches. Graham or Logan delivers them. Standing under the spotlight, their voices full of manufactured sincerity. They are applauded for their deep and abiding commitment to Austin's future. My name is never on the program. I am never mentioned on the brochure. I am the ghostwriter for their conscience, providing the authentic empathy they cannot source themselves. Marla's guiding principle, which she has stated to me directly, is, "We are a brand. Noelle, family is a brand. Feelings are a liability unless they are properly leveraged." I have learned to endure their planning dinners, to sit quietly as they map out their corporate strategies. I keep a mental ledger, a running list of the casual dismissals, the subtle degradations. It is just a teacher's salary. After all, it is sweet that you think that is real money. This community work you do is a lovely little hobby, but it does not exactly move the needle, does it? And Graham's favorite, real-world results are measured in dollars. Noelle, do not bring emotions to a balance sheet. I nod. I smile faintly. I record every word in my memory. I use their dismissal as fuel. It clarifies my purpose. My grandfather Edmund is the only one who operates on a different frequency. He sits through these dinners, sipping his water, an island of stillness. He watches everyone. When he speaks to me, it is always in private, over a rare coffee we schedule. He never asks about the Everharts. He asks about Forge Pathways. "How many students this semester?" he asked last week. 138, I replied. "What is your data on improvement?" "We have 92% measurable improvement in STEM subject test scores after 1 year. And the practical outcome? 17 of our graduates just got into competitive engineering summer camps. 2 just received full-ride scholarships to state universities." He nodded, a single sharp gesture of acknowledgement. He understands metrics. He just values different ones. The tension in the city is palpable, and the biggest event of the season is fast approaching. It is the annual City Builders Gala. This is the apex predator of Austin charity events, a night where hundreds of millions of dollars in development and political influence are consolidated. Everhart Meridian Holdings is the platinum sponsor. This is their night to cement their dominance. Graham is scheduled to give the keynote address. They are planning to announce their most ambitious project yet, a massive waterfront development. They need this night to be a flawless exhibition of their power and, more importantly, their civic benevolence. What they do not know is that I have a secret. 2 months ago, without telling them, I submitted an application for the Austin Alliance's Civic Impact Award. It is the most prestigious honor for nonprofits in the city. Forge Pathways is one of 3 finalists. The winner is announced live on stage at the City Builders Gala. My team and I finished our final video submission 3 days ago. It is not a glossy corporate reel. It is raw footage from our classrooms. It is my students, in their own words, explaining how they built a functioning hydraulic arm from medical syringes and plastic tubing. It is a single mother, crying on camera, describing how her daughter went from failing math to wanting to be an aerospace engineer. It is hard data, charts showing progress, graphs showing engagement. The Austin Alliance keeps the names of the finalists a closely guarded secret until the moment of the announcement. The Everharts have no idea that their teacher daughter, the one with the little hobby, is a finalist for one of the night's main awards. They are focused on their keynote speech, on the seating charts, on the press releases. They have no idea that their carefully constructed narrative is about to collide with a reality they never bothered to see. My birthday dinner was, naturally, not for my birthday. It was held at a starkly minimalist restaurant where the plates cost more than my monthly electricity bill, and it was, in reality, a strategy session for the Lake Haven quarter. This was Graham's new obsession, a multi-$100 million mixed-use development poised to revitalize a swath of the East Side, the same neighborhood where half of my students lived. The blueprints were unrolled on the table after the appetizers. held down by heavy water glasses. "We need to finalize the community engagement angle before the gala," Graham announced to the table, which included 2 developers and a very silent city council liaison. Logan, sensing his cue to perform, turned to me. He attempted a look of sudden, brilliant inspiration. "Noelle, you are the perfect person for this." I waited. "You are so good with words, the emotional stuff," he continued, snapping his fingers as if I were a waiter. "Dad is giving the keynote at the City Builders Gala. We need you to write it for him." Graham finally looked up from the plans, his gaze assessing. "It needs to be about education, the future, how Lake Haven is not just a building, it is a foundation for the next generation." "I am a little busy, Logan," I said, my voice flat. "It will be easy for you," he dismissed. "We need it in 72 hours. A full draft, no brief. Just make it sound committed." 72 hours. During my final exam week. Marla, sensing a flicker of resistance, leaned across the table, her diamond earrings catching the light. She placed her manicured hand near mine. Her voice was a conspiratorial whisper, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Noelle, darling, it is just what you do," she said, her smile tight. "You talk about the poor kids, and it sounds so touching. We just need that, but keep it short. We are aiming for impactful, not depressing. A tight 3 minutes." One of the developers chuckled. Logan, emboldened, smirked at the liaison. "My sister's volunteer work is just so cute, is it not? She gets so passionate about it." A few polite, uncomfortable laughs followed. Graham, seeing the conversation drift from the balance sheet, tapped the blueprint. "The sentiment is nice, Noelle, but remember what this is about. Real results are numbers, tangible assets. Do not bring feelings to the table." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. They wanted me to write a speech full of feelings about a project that had none, for a man who explicitly forbade them. 72 hours, I said. It was not a question. I went home and I wrote the speech, but I did not write their speech. I wrote mine. I wrote about the structural inequities that Forge Pathways was built to address. I embedded my data. I wrote about the 92% measurable improvement in STEM scores. I wrote about the 17 students who won summer engineering scholarships. I wrote about the need for corporate responsibility that went beyond branding, that required actual investment in the human capital they claimed to value. I named the neighborhoods they were displacing. I sent the draft at 4 a.m. 48 hours later. The reply came from Marla, not Graham. 8 hours later. The subject line was simply, revisions. "Noelle," the email began, "this is a very academic effort. It is just too heavy. I have made some adjustments to clean up the message. See attached." I opened the document. It was a bloodbath. My data was gone. My statistics were deleted. The names of the neighborhoods were replaced with "our vibrant community." My call for systemic change was replaced with a paragraph about synergistic public-private partnerships. It was hollow. It was meaningless. It was perfectly aggressively bland. It was an Everhart document. But Marla had made a mistake. In her haste to clean up my message, she had replied to me from an existing internal thread, and she had failed to delete the previous message. Below her email to me, I could read her original message to Graham and Logan, sent just 30 minutes prior. Graham, Logan, I have handled the Noelle problem. Her draft was, as predicted, completely unusable, far too much social justice, and not enough shareholder value. I have neutralized the bleeding heart angle and rewritten it to focus on the brand. We can now leverage her teacher in the family story as a humanitarian prop for the Lake Haven announcement. It humanizes Graham beautifully. She will be an asset at the gala. A humanitarian prop. I closed my laptop. I did not feel anger, not the hot kind. I felt a sudden, sharp, Arctic cold, a clarity. I picked up my phone, opened the voice memo app, and pressed record. Then I called her. "Marla," I said, my voice perfectly even. "I just saw your edits. They are certainly comprehensive. Yes, darling. Her voice was bright, relieved that I was being compliant. So much stronger. Yes, we need to inspire confidence, not guilt. That is the Everhart way. So, just to confirm, I said, watching the timer on the recorder tick up. You want me to cut all the statistics about the student improvement? Oh, absolutely. It just bogs people down. We want them to feel good. Focus on the feeling of hope, she instructed. And the part about the scholarships? It sounds like bragging about pocket change, not elevated. Just say we support educational dreams. It is broader. It covers more. Now, if that is all, I have a call with the caterer. Click. I saved the recording. I labeled it Gala Speech Edits. It was not for blackmail. It was not to expose her. It was for me. It was a permanent record, in her own voice, reminding me exactly what I was worth to them. I was building a case for my own defense, a reminder for the moment I might be tempted to feel guilty. The next day, 2 things arrived. The first was a thick, cream-colored envelope delivered by courier. It was the official invitation to the City Builders Gala. The Austin Alliance logo was embossed in gold. We are pleased to have you join us as our guest, it read. It did not name me as a finalist, but I knew this was my ticket. The second was a text from my grandfather. Coffee, 30 minutes. We met at the small, independent shop near his downtown condo. It smelled like roasted beans and old wood, a world away from Marla's sterile aesthetics. He did not waste time with small talk. He never did. He did not mention the birthday dinner. I have been thinking about your program, he said, holding his black coffee with both hands. Forge Pathways. It is a good name. Thank you. I have one question. When you are not there, who carries on? It was the most important question anyone had ever asked me. It was not about passion, it was about structure. I am not a one-woman show. Grandpa, I said, I have a team of 4 mentors. 2 of them are my first-year graduates. I have documented every process, every curriculum module, in a procedural manual. I have built a board. It is designed to outlast me. He looked at me over the rim of his cup. He was a systems man. He had built an engineering empire on processes that worked, with or without him. I had just given him the only answer he would respect. A slow nod. Good, he said. He looked out the window at a crane moving in the distance. Noelle, do not argue in their room. You will never win. They set the rules. They own the walls. They will exhaust you, and they will call it a discussion. He turned back, his eyes clear and direct. You must speak in your own room. You must build a room so solid that they have to come to you. I understood. The gala was not their room, not entirely. They were just the platinum sponsor. The stage belonged to the city. The gala was 3 weeks away. I checked the seating chart, which had been published in the Austin Business Journal as a preview of the who's who attending. Everhart Meridian Holdings. Table number 1. They were not just front and center. They were 20 feet from the stage. Close enough to see everything. Close enough to be seen by everyone. The restaurant was one of those downtown Austin places that looked more like a geology exhibit than somewhere people actually ate. It was called Sedera, all exposed limestone, slabs of dark marble, and agonizingly precise angles. Candles flickered, but they offered no warmth. Only sharp reflections on the arsenal of crystal wine glasses at every place setting. There were 40 guests, 40 strategic allies, development partners, and city influencers, all gathered in this private room, ostensibly for another of my birthdays. We were seated at a long, polished table that felt like a runway. Graham, at the head, was holding court. I was seated in the middle, the required buffer zone between a potential investor and my half-brother, Logan. The appetizer plates were cleared. I picked up my water glass, my cue to perform the small, obligatory role of the evening. I just wanted to thank everyone, I started, trying to project a gratitude I did not feel. It is so kind of you all to come and celebrate. And speaking of celebrating, Graham cut in, his voice drowning mine out without even raising its volume. It was an effortless execution. The Lake Haven quarter is moving into its second phase, and our partners at Ridgeback Capital. He nodded to the man on his right. Are ensuring we break ground ahead of schedule. I put my glass down. The conversation, having briefly threatened to acknowledge my existence, was safely rerouted back to concrete and capital. I disappeared. I went back to studying the intricate weave of my linen napkin, folding and unfolding the corner. The dinner resumed its natural rhythm, the rise and fall of conversation about zoning variances, tax incentives, and the new hospitality wing. A woman to my left, Geraldine, a construction VP with sharp eyes and calloused hands, turned to me. She seemed genuinely curious, perhaps mistaking me for a person of consequence. I am sorry. I did not catch what you do, Noelle. Before I could form a sentence, Logan leaned across the table. His smile was predatory. She is a teacher, he announced, as if revealing a charming, slightly embarrassing secret. Middle school, teacher's salary. He said teacher's salary like it was a terminal diagnosis. A few polite, awkward chuckles rippled through the immediate vicinity. It was the laugh of people who did not know me, but understood Logan. They understood the code. I was not one of them. Geraldine looked uncomfortable, glancing back at her plate. Marla, next to Graham, saw the social ripple. She shook her head. A minute, sharp movement, and subtly signaled a waiter. She was annoyed. This brief, human interaction was inefficient. It was distracting from the agenda. The next course needed to come out. Now. I do not know what possessed me. Maybe it was Logan's smirk. Maybe it was the fact that my classroom was less than 3 miles from the Lake Haven quarter. A project that was actively displacing 2 of my students' families. Maybe it was just exhaustion. I broke the cardinal rule. I brought reality to their table. Since we are talking about Lake Haven, I said, my voice quiet but clear, cutting through a pause in the discussion. I was just wondering how the commitment to the Community Scholarship Fund was progressing. The one for the displaced residents in that district. The silence that fell was entirely different. It was not polite. It was absolute. It was the sound of a machine grinding to a halt. Graham froze, a piece of bread halfway to his mouth. Logan's smirk vanished, replaced by open-mouthed shock. Marla turned her head, very slowly. Her eyes were not angry. They were cold. They were the eyes of a CEO looking at a faulty product. She said nothing. Instead, she reached for the heavy silver napkin ring next to her plate. It was a solid, brushed metal, thick as a bangle. And she flicked it. It was not a throw. It was a short, sharp, precise strike, an act of immediate correction. The ring flew across the 3 feet of space between us and struck my right wrist, the one resting on the table. The sound was sharp, a metallic clack as it hit the bone. Pain shot up my arm, a hot, stinging vibration. Don't, Marla said, her voice perfectly modulated, pleasant, but loud enough for our half of the table to hear clearly. Ruin the mood. I looked down at my wrist. A red welt was already rising where the metal had landed. The room was utterly still. 40 pairs of eyes. Everyone saw it. Geraldine's mouth was slightly open. The developer next to her was staring at his wine glass, as if it held the secrets to the universe. I am 32 years old. I thought, I am an adult. I am a professional. I am sitting at a table with 40 other professionals. And my stepmother just threw a piece of metal at me for asking about a scholarship fund. My instinct was to snatch the ring and throw it back at her face. My instinct was to scream. My instinct was to burst into tears. Instead, I stood up. My chair scraped against the limestone floor. The sound was deafening in the silence. I did not look at Marla. I did not look at Graham. I looked at the red, throbbing mark on my skin. I held my wrist. I breathed in. Once, I breathed out. I did not retaliate. I did not meet violence with violence. I simply registered the data. And then, the horror. The developer who had been studying his glass cleared his throat. So, as I was saying to Graham about the concrete sourcing, We found a new supplier that cuts costs by 10%. And just like that, the spell was broken. The conversation resumed. The machine started again. The sound of forks and knives on porcelain, the discussion of contracts and profit margins, it all flowed back, filling the vacuum. The entire table, all 40 witnesses, collectively agreed that what had just happened had not happened. I was still standing. I was invisible. Then, a second sound. Across the table, my grandfather, Edmund Hart, moved. He did not say a word. He did not look at me. He did not look at Marla. He simply placed his napkin neatly on the table. He pushed his chair back, stood up, and adjusted his suit jacket. Then he turned and walked out of the private dining room. He did not excuse himself. He did not offer an explanation. He just left. His departure left a vacuum that was not social, but tactical, a genuine power void. Marla watched him go, her expression hardening. He was a problem she could not flick a napkin ring at. I watched him go, and the hot pain in my wrist turned into that familiar Arctic cold. Slowly, I sat back down. My heart was not racing. It was beating with a slow, heavy, deliberate rhythm. I had chosen silence over explosion. I had observed. I had confirmed the hypothesis. The rest of the dinner was a blur of performative normality. The main course arrived. Dessert was served. Graham, apparently oblivious to the fact that his father-in-law had walked out and his wife had assaulted his daughter, eventually raised his glass for the final toast. "To family," he said, beaming at the room. "The foundation of everything we do. To unity." Someone murmured, "To unity," glasses clinked. Across the table, Marla smiled. She raised her glass. Her eyes met mine. Just for a second. It was the small, satisfied smile of someone who had faced an insurrection and quelled it. She had won. I left as soon as it was polite. I walked out of the climate-controlled restaurant and into the humid Austin night. The air felt thick, but I could finally breathe. I stood under a streetlight, the throb in my wrist pulsing in time with the distant music from 6th Street. I took out my phone. I did not text my grandfather. I did not text a friend. I sent a text message to myself, a note. It had only 10 words. "Stop asking them to see you. Make the city see you." The bruise on my wrist had bloomed overnight, a mottled, ugly purple. It was a useful visual, a data point. It confirmed, in a way no conversation ever could, the precise nature of my relationship with the Everharts. It was not family. It was a power dynamic, and I had just been corrected for stepping out of line. I did not wake up angry. Anger is hot and imprecise. I woke up cold. I woke up with a clarity that felt like a low-voltage current humming under my skin. At 9 a.m., I was in South Lamar. I was looking at a small, 800-square-foot studio above a print shop. It had exposed brick, old wooden floors that slanted slightly to the west, and a wall of windows that flooded the space with morning light. It was dusty, and it smelled like old paper and ink from the shop below. It was perfect. By 10:30 a.m., I had signed a 1-year lease. It was the first time I had ever signed a commercial lease. It was a significant portion of my savings. A reckless, terrifying, and absolutely necessary move. This was the first official headquarters of Forge Pathways. It was not a borrowed room in a church basement. It was not a corner of my apartment. It was a physical address. It was, as my grandfather had said, my room. I spent the next 48 hours in a state of controlled fury. I did not move furniture. I moved data. I consolidated every file from my 3 scattered locations. I pinned my metrics to the wall. 138 students currently enrolled. 92% measurable improvement in STEM subject test scores after 1 year. 17 summer camp scholarships secured. I looked at the numbers, stark and clean against the brick. This was not a cute hobby. This was a high-performance organization. My next task was the video submission for the Austin Alliance. The cut we had sent was good, but it was too focused on me. It was my voice, as the founder, narrating the success. It was the exact angle Marla would have used, the humanitarian prop. I called the freelance editor I had hired. "Alex," I said, "I need an emergency change to the civic impact submission. We have 24 hours. Noelle, the file is locked. The judging is in process. I am a finalist. They will take an update. I was banking on it. I am sending you new instructions. I want you to rebuild the first minute. I want you to cut my narration entirely, all of it." "The whole intro, Noelle? That is your founder story." "The founder story is irrelevant," I said, my voice sharp. "I want you to open with the interview of Mrs. Sandoval, the one where she talks about her son failing math. And I want you to cut from her to the close-up of her son teaching the other kids to debug the robot. I want the voices of the students and the parents, exclusively. The only time you should see me is in the B-roll, the shot of my hands on the circuit board. That is it." "It is your program," he said, sounding doubtful. "No, it is their program. I just facilitate, make the change." He sent the new file that night. It was powerful. It was raw. It was undeniable. It was not about me. It was about the work. I forwarded it to the Austin Alliance with a note. "Updated cut for final consideration." I received an automated confirmation. It was done. My next call was to the Alliance's event coordinator, a woman named Sarah. "Sarah, hi, this is Noelle Hart. I have a quick logistical question about the gala." "Of course, Ms. Hart. We are so excited about your program. The work you are doing is just incredible." Her genuine enthusiasm was almost jarring. "Thank you," I said. "I just wanted to confirm the protocol for the Civic Impact Award presentation. Will the 3 finalists be announced publicly before the gala?" "Oh, no," she said, her voice bright. "That is the most exciting part of the evening. We keep the finalists completely secret until the presentation. It is our big surprise." "So no one knows who the finalists are?" I pressed, needing absolute certainty. "No one but the judges and my team. We will introduce the category, then we will play the 3 finalist videos, back to back to back, and then our presenter will open the envelope and announce the winner. The audience finds out who the finalists are at the same time the videos play. It is incredibly dramatic." "That sounds perfect," I said, my pulse steady. "Thank you, Sarah. That is exactly what I needed to know." I hung up the phone. I looked at the seating chart I had saved on my desktop. Everhart Meridian Holdings, Table 1, Platinum Sponsor, 10 feet from the stage. They would be trapped. They would be a captive audience. I sat down at the folding table I had set up in the middle of my new, empty studio. I opened a blank document. I had to write a speech, a 3-minute acceptance speech for an award. I had a 1 in 3 chance of winning. I wrote the first draft. It was angry. It was sarcastic. It was full of veiled references to true philanthropy and those who use community as a brand. I read it aloud to the empty room. It sounded weak. It sounded like a victim. It was still an argument in their room. I deleted the entire file. I started again. This time, I did not think about the Everharts. I thought about my students. I thought about their families. I thought about the 17 kids going to engineering camp. I wrote the speech with no adjectives of outrage. I built it with the nouns and verbs of the work itself. I wrote about the specific gap between talent and opportunity. I wrote about the 92%. I made every sentence a paving stone for my students, not a brick to throw at my family. It was a speech about building, not burning. When I finished, I read it aloud. It was clean. It was hard as granite. It was 3 minutes long. I saved it. My phone, which had been quiet for 2 days, buzzed. A text from Logan. "Noelle, where are the final edits on Dad's keynote?" Marla is asking. "Needed ASAP." It was the ASAP that got me. The casual, entitled urgency, as if I were an assistant, as if the scene with the napkin ring had been a minor disagreement, already forgotten. I looked at the text. I thought about the voice memo I still had saved. I thought about the bruise, now a sickly yellow-green. I typed one word. No. I hit send. My phone immediately began to ring. Logan, I declined the call. A new text message appeared instantly. Then, this isn't a joke, Noelle. Marla is going to be furious. I typed my second and final reply. That sounds like a Marla problem. I am no longer available for unpaid consulting. The next text was from a different number. Graham, Noelle, call me. This is unprofessional. We have a family brand to maintain. I expect a draft by 5 p.m. I looked at his message. Family brand. The words tasted like ash. I went into my phone's settings. I found the Everhart family group chat. I silenced notifications. I did the same for the Everhart events thread. I blocked Marla's number. I blocked Logan's. I left Graham's open, but silenced. The silence was immediate and profound. My phone buzzed one more time, a different thread. Forge mentors. It was Javier, my lead mentor. Team meeting tonight? Where are we? I replied. 7 p.m., 2 to 12 South Lamar, Studio B. I am buying pizza. We have an HQ. The replies were a cascade of exclamation points and celebration. I kept that channel open. My scheduled coffee with my grandfather was at our usual spot. He was there when I walked in, reading a physical newspaper. He folded it precisely as I sat down. He did not mention the dinner. He did not ask about my wrist, though he glanced at it once, a brief, sharp assessment. He did not mention walking out. The incident was a closed file. South Lamar, he said, as the waitress brought my coffee. Good visibility, high foot traffic. You have been scouting my location? I smiled. I know the building. The foundation is solid. He took a sip of his coffee. When will you stop owing rent? It was the same question he had asked before, but this time it was not a philosophical query, it was a tactical one. I stop owing rent when I secure long-term, multi-year funding, I said, meeting his gaze. When I am not grant-chasing every quarter, when I have a capital reserve. Good, he nodded. This gala, this award, it is an inflection point. If you win, the attention will be immediate, and that attention comes in two forms, opportunity and scrutiny. I know. People will come for you, the partners you want, and the predators you do not. They will want to see your books. They will look for weakness. They will look for leverage. Marla and Graham speak in brand equity. It is missed. You must speak in data. You must be granite. Let the facts do the work. He paused, looking out the window. Present the facts, he said, and let the rest happen on its own. I spent the last week before the gala not practicing my speech, but meeting with the pro bono accountant who handled my 501c3 paperwork. I need a full transparency packet, I told her. Assume we are about to be audited by the most aggressive firm in Texas. I want every receipt, every grant expenditure, every outcome metric, compiled and ready. By the time she was done, I had a 50-page PDF that detailed the precise financial and ethical health of Forge Pathways. And I added one more document. I wrote it myself. In the quiet of the new studio, I called it the Forge Pathways Code of Conduct. It was a simple, 2-page statement of principles. It was for mentors, students, and all future funding partners. It outlined our commitment to empirical evidence, to student safety, and to professional respect. I wrote one clause with particular care. All interactions, especially those in a professional or mentorship capacity, must be conducted with dignity. Any act of public humiliation, verbal abuse, or physical intimidation used to correct or control a colleague, partner, or student is grounds for the immediate and permanent termination of that relationship. I was not just building a program, I was building a fortress, and I was writing the rules for the room my grandfather had told me to build. The first public tremor was almost invisible. It appeared on a Wednesday. In the city section of the Austin Statesman, it was a small, 2-column box under the fold, announcing the finalists for the Civic Impact Award. It listed 3 organizations: the East Side Arts Collective, Green Routes Initiative, and Forge Pathways. There were no founder names, no pictures, just the names of the organizations, described in a single dry sentence each. I read mine. Forge Pathways, a nonprofit providing applied STEM education to underserved youth. It was sterile. It was perfect. It was a fact, not a story. I cut it out and pinned it to the brick wall of the studio, right next to the chart of my 92% improvement metric. The next day, the Austin Alliance released their 30-second social media teaser for the gala. It was a slickly produced montage. It showed hands building a community garden. It showed a dance performance from the Arts Collective. And then, for 3 seconds, it showed a shot from my video. It was a close-up of a small Lego robot, built on one of our donated kits. Successfully navigating a maze, you could hear the audio. It was not music, it was the sound of my students, a chaotic, joyous eruption of laughter and shouting the moment the robot hit its mark. It did it. It worked. I watched it loop 5 times. That afternoon, I received a forwarded email chain from an anonymous address. It was an internal Everhart Meridian thread. The subject, Gala Messaging, Lake Haven Tie-In. I scrolled past the pleasantries. It was Logan, writing to Marla and Graham. Confirming the keynote beats, he wrote. Dad hits the Lake Haven as community foundation angle, but the real win is the testimonial. We should have a surprise moment where we celebrate a local hero of education. We can leverage this as part of our deep investment in the community. It humanizes the Lake Haven project. We celebrate our commitment to community success. Marla's reply was blunt. Good, but do not name an individual. We celebrate the concept of community education. We do not want to create a new personality. We absorb the concept. It becomes part of the Everhart Meridian brand. We are the ones celebrating it. Therefore, we own the narrative. They were going to stand on that stage, 10 feet from my table, and announce their discovery of community education. They were going to co-opt the entire idea as a marketing tool for their luxury condos. They were going to celebrate the concept, completely ignorant of the fact that the city was about to celebrate the reality. I closed the email. I looked at the news clipping on the wall. I thought about the sound of my students' laughter in the teaser video. The community, I whispered to the empty room, will answer for itself. The phone call from my grandfather came 2 days before the gala. It was, as usual, brutally efficient. I will be there, he said. It was not a question. It was not, I got the invitation. It was a statement of intent. I am glad, I said. Good. Stay focused on the data. He hung up. I did not buy a gown. Gowns are for celebrating. They are for being looked at. I was not going to be looked at. I was going to be heard. I went to a consignment shop downtown and bought a simple, beautifully tailored, charcoal gray suit. It was not a power suit, one of those 80s relics. It was just a uniform. It was professional, quiet, and fit me perfectly. It was armor. When I got it home, I took a small, dog-eared index card from my desk drawer. It was from a student named Maya. From my first ever cohort 3 years ago. She had given it to me when she got her first acceptance letter to a community college program for computer science. Her handwriting was round and careful. It said, Ms. Hart, before your class I thought I was bad at school. I just wanted to thank you because you made me believe I was smart. I folded the card once and put it in the suit's inner breast pocket. It lay flat against my ribs. It was my data. It was my shield. That same afternoon, I finalized the paperwork that felt more important than the award. Forge Pathways officially signed a partnership agreement with Austin Community College. My graduates, starting next fall, would be eligible for first-year course credits based on the work they completed in my program. It was the first credit-bearing scholarship of its kind in the state. I now had a tangible, institutional pathway. I was not just teaching kids to build robots in a basement. I was building a bridge that led directly to higher education. I printed new business cards on heavy, uncoated white cardstock. Noelle Hart, founder and executive director, Forge Pathways. Underneath was the new studio address on South Lamar and my email. There was no phone number, there was no link to any social media, and there was, most pointedly, No mention of the Everhart name, which I still technically shared. These cards were me. They were the program. They were separate, solid, and real. At the new headquarters, my team of mentors was energized. They were not focused on the gala. They were focused on the future. They were storyboarding a presentation for potential new donors, using the students' own project logs as the script. They were not rehearsing for a party. They were preparing for the work that would come after. I imagine Graham was also rehearsing. I pictured him in his study, the one with the dark wood and the view of the skyline. I saw him standing in front of a mirror, practicing the speech Marla had written for him. He would be practicing his sincere look. He would be modulating his voice to convey compassionate leadership. He would be memorizing lines about the synergistic power of community and the dream of a brighter future for all, words that were as hollow as the building shells he was putting up. He would be practicing for his role as the city's benevolent father, completely unaware that his actual daughter was about to present the city with a receipt. The day before the gala, a courier arrived at the studio. He had a single, stiff, 9x12 envelope. It was heavy, made of thick, cream-colored cardstock. There was no return address. My name was written on the front in my grandfather's sharp, precise, architectural hand. I signed for it. I dismissed the courier. I sat at my folding table and looked at it. Inside was another, smaller envelope, sealed with a plain wax seal. It was not his initial, just a blank, anonymous circle of dark red. Attached to it was a small, folded note. "Noel," it read. "Speak your truth. Present your data. That should be enough. But if it is not, use this. Use it if you must." I held the sealed envelope. It was thick. It felt like it contained photographs, or perhaps a legal document. It was heavy with implied purpose. I felt a tremor of fear. What had he done? What had he gathered? I thought of the restaurant. I thought of his silent departure. My first impulse was to open it. My second was to burn it. He had told me to build my own room, to be granite, relying on a secret envelope, a deus ex machina from my wealthy grandfather, felt like a betrayal of that principle. It felt like his power, not mine. But he had said, "If you must." He was a systems man. He understood contingency planning. This was not a weapon to be used for offense. It was a fire extinguisher. I did not open it. I slid the sealed envelope into the same inner pocket of my suit jacket as Maya's index card. One was my reason, the other was my reserve. I zipped the suit bag closed. I was ready. The ballroom at the downtown hotel were a cavern of manufactured light. It was vast, holding 500 of Austin's most powerful citizens, and the air was thick with expensive perfume and the high, thin ringing of champagne flutes toasting one another. Men in tuxedos and women in glittering gowns moved in slow, strategic orbits, their voices a low, confident hum. This was the engine room of the new Austin, and tonight it was running at full capacity. Massive LED screens flanked the stage, and on them, a rotating loop of sponsor logos played. The loop was short. It did not need to be long. At the very top, in a bold, custom typeface that screamed legacy, was the name Everhart Meridian Holdings, Platinum Sponsor. I could see them from my vantage point. I was not a guest. I was a finalist. And as a finalist, I had been asked to wait in a small, roped-off area near the stage, a holding pen just behind the heavy black curtain that separated the spectacle from the mechanics. From the gap in the curtain, I had a perfect oblique view of table number 1. It was not just a table, it was a throne room. It sat on a slightly raised platform, bathed in its own dedicated, subtle spotlight, ensuring everyone in the room knew who had paid for the privilege. A large, floral centerpiece exploded from its middle, and a placard bearing the Everhart Meridian logo sat facing the audience, gleaming like a crown. And there they were. Graham, my father, at the head. He was in his element, laughing, his hands gesturing expanses of air as he no doubt described the expanses of land he was about to conquer. He was the benevolent king, bestowing his presence on the lesser royalty at his table. Marla was beside him, perfect and still, her silver dress catching the light. She was a panther, surveying her territory, her smile fixed but her eyes constantly scanning. She was assessing the value of every dress, the strength of every alliance, the precise social wattage of the room. She was working. And Logan, my half-brother, was leaning in, trying to absorb the spotlight from his father. He was a man performing the role of heir apparent, his laughter a beat too loud, his gestures a shade too broad. They were the perfect picture of a dynasty, confident, untouchable, and completely blissfully ignorant. I let the curtain fall back into place. My hand, inside the pocket of my gray suit, was wrapped around a folded index card. My fingers traced the indentation of the ink, the round letters Maya had written. You made me believe I was smart. My heart was not racing. It was slow. It was the heavy rhythmic thud of a siege engine. I was not nervous. I was prepared. The data was ready. The house lights dimmed. The low hum of 500 conversations faded, replaced by the amplified, disembodied voice of the MC. Good evening, Austin. A polite wave of applause. I peeked through the curtain again. The program was starting. I saw a late arrival slip into the room, a man moving with a quiet efficiency that was the opposite of the Everhart's performative entrance. My grandfather. He was not in a tuxedo. He wore a dark, impeccably tailored suit that was older than I was and worth more than my car. The event coordinator, flustered, pointed him toward the Everhart table, the obvious empty seat. Edmund looked at table number 1. He looked at Graham, laughing under the spotlight. Then he shook his head, a single, brief negative. He turned and walked to a table in the back, near the sound booth. He sat down next to an older man I vaguely recognized, someone from the early days of Austin Tech, another self-made millionaire who did not bother with galas. My grandfather unfolded his napkin and ordered a glass of water. He had not come as an Everhart. He had come as a witness. The first 40 minutes of the program were a blur of civic self-congratulation. The mayor spoke. The CEO of the Austin Alliance spoke. They praised the city's vibrant growth and unmatched philanthropic spirit. From my angle, I could see Graham nod gravely at the mention of philanthropy, as if he had invented it. And now, the MC said, her voice shifting into a more sincere, important gear, we come to one of our most prestigious honors, the Civic Impact Award. My breath caught. I stepped back from the curtain. I stood in the darkness, my feet planted on the concrete floor. This award honors a grassroots organization that is making a measurable, profound difference in the lives of Austinites. The selection, as always, was incredibly difficult, and our finalists represent the very best of our city's heart. Let's take a look at our first finalist, the Green Routes Initiative. The lights went down. A video played. It was well made, showing volunteers planting community gardens in urban food deserts. It was good work. It was important work. When the video ended, the lights came up, and the ballroom responded with a solid, respectful round of applause. At table number 1, Marla clapped precisely 3 times, a sharp, percussive sound, before checking her phone under the table. The MC waited for the applause to die. A wonderful, wonderful program, she said. Truly vital. She looked down at her cards. My stomach went tight. Our second nominee, she continued, is an organization that is changing how our children access their own potential. They are tackling one of the biggest challenges in education, the STEM gap, and they are doing it one student at a time, with results that are simply undeniable. This was it. The main screens went dark. The ballroom was plunged into a sudden, expectant silence. Even table number 1 was still. The first image to appear was not a logo. It was a close-up of a scarred, wooden table. A pair of small brown hands were visible, carefully soldering a green circuit board. Then the audio kicked in. It was not a narrator. It was Mrs. Sandoval. I am a housekeeper, she said, her voice rough with emotion, her accent thick and familiar to me. I work hard, but my son, he was He was failing. The school told me he was not college material. They said he had trouble focusing. The screen cut to a new shot. Her son, Javier, the one who was not college material, standing in front of a whiteboard in our borrowed classroom. He was animated, explaining a complex line of code to 3 other students, who were watching him with rapt attention. The video cut again, a bar graph, simple, stark. Forge Pathways Cohort, 2023-2024. On the left, a bar labeled Pre-Program STEM Scores. On the right, a bar labeled Post-Program. The post-program bar was 92% higher. I peeked through the curtain. Logan, who had been looking at his phone, had just looked up. His head was tilted, a look of mild confusion on his face. Marla was frowning. She was not frowning at the screen. She was frowning at the silence. The room was not just quiet. It was focused. 500 people were absolutely silent, listening to Mrs. Sandoval. This was not the polite inattention of a charity dinner. This was a room paying attention. The video continued. A close-up of Maya's face, glowing with pride, as her small robot successfully navigated the maze, and then the audio that I had loved so much. The explosion of joy, the shouting, the pure, unscripted sound of children succeeding. A final image, a group shot of my 17 students, holding their certificates for the summer engineering camp. They were grinning, chaotic, and brilliant. And then, as the sound of their laughter faded, the screen went black. For 2 long seconds, there was nothing. Then, simple white text appeared, sharp and clean against the black. Founder and Executive Director, Noelle Hart. I heard it before I saw it. A gasp, a sharp, collective intake of breath from the tables nearest the stage. From my position, I could see the live feed camera operator, the one designated to get audience reactions. He had been trained to focus on table number 1 all night. He was a professional. He did his job. On the massive LED screens, the simple white text of my name was suddenly replaced by a live shot of my family. It was a masterpiece of unplanned cinematography. Graham's smile was frozen, but it was no longer a smile. It was a rictus. He was staring at the name on the prompter screen, his brain clearly unable to process the data. Logan's mouth was literally open. He was looking from the screen, to his father, to the stage, like a man trying to solve a complex math problem in a language he did not speak. And Marla was magnificent. Her face did not move, not a single muscle, but her eyes. Her eyes went from confused to narrowed, to an absolute Arctic white fury. She was not angry that I was a finalist. She was furious that she had not known. She was furious that her humanitarian prop had just walked off the script and built its own stage. In the ballroom, people were starting to connect the dots. I heard a low murmur. A woman at a nearby table turned and looked directly at table number 1. She recognized me. She had been at the dinner, the one where Logan had announced my teacher's salary. The shot held on my family's stunned faces for 3, 4, 5 seconds. It was an eternity of silent, brutal exposure. Then the lights came up. The MC was beaming, oblivious to the microdrama she had just detonated. An incredible, incredible story, she said, her voice booming. Please join me in congratulating our second finalist. From Forge Pathways, please welcome Noelle Hart. The spotlight hit the curtain where I was standing. The applause began, and it was not the polite applause of the first video. It was loud. It was real. It was laced with the genuine shock and excitement of an audience that had just seen a real story. I took one last breath. I felt the sharp corners of Maya's card in my pocket. I felt the sealed, heavy weight of my grandfather's envelope. I pushed the curtain aside and walked out of the darkness, into the light. The applause was a physical thing. It was not a polite ripple. It was a wall of sound that hit me as I stepped through the curtain. It was thick, sustained, and it rose in volume as I walked toward the podium. 500 people, the city's elite, were on their feet. I did not rush. I walked at a steady, measured pace. The single spotlight was hot. blinding me to the faces in the darkness. But I did not need to see them. I was focused on the small, dark lectern in the center of the vast stage. My breathing was even, in out. The gray suit felt like a uniform. My hand was in my pocket, my thumb rubbing the creased edge of Maya's index card. You made me believe I was smart. This was not their room. It was not the restaurant. It was not the Everhart dining table. This was a neutral space, and I had been invited to speak. I reached the podium. I placed my hands on either side, feeling the smooth, cool wood. I looked out into the darkness, past the lights, and waited. I did not smile. I did not nod. I simply waited, letting the applause continue for 3, 4, 5 seconds. Then, as if a switch had been thrown, the room fell silent. The silence was as absolute as the applause had been loud. They were waiting. They were listening. I looked up, letting my eyes adjust. I did not look at table number 1. I looked past them, to the middle of the room, to the back of the room. I spoke into the microphone, my voice not loud, but clear. It was my teacher voice, the one that needed no amplification to command attention. Talent is everywhere in this city, I began. Opportunity is not. I paused. I let the 2 simple, declarative sentences land in the quiet. We tell ourselves that the gap between them is a canyon, that it is too wide to cross. The truth is, it is not. It is just a space waiting for a bridge. I am a teacher, and for the last 3 years, I have been working with a small team of educators and volunteers, building one of those bridges. Our organization is called Forge Pathways. We are not a charity. We are an accelerator. We find the talent that this city is overlooking, and we provide the tools and the pathway. This year, we are working with 138 students from the lowest income zip codes in Austin. I saw a few people in the front rows lean forward. The number was specific. We are told that these students are at risk. We are told that these are challenging demographics. I am here to report that after 1 year in our program, our students show a 92% measurable improvement in their STEM subject test scores. A ripple went through the room, not applause, but a murmur. 92%. It was not an emotional plea. It was a statistic. It was a granite fact. It was a number that everyone in that room, men and women who lived and died by quarterly reports, could understand. We do not just teach theory, we build pathways to real-world application. This summer, our students, the same ones who were told they were not college material, earned 17 fully funded scholarships to competitive engineering and coding camps across the state. I let that number hang in the air. 17 lives, 17 families, 17 futures, rerouted. I am here accepting this nomination, I continued. But the gratitude does not belong to me. It belongs to the high school principals who gave us their problem kids. It belongs to the community center director who let us use her basement for free for 2 years. It belongs to the parents who trusted us with their children. And it belongs to our mentors, many of them graduates of the program themselves, who show up every single day. I had named the true sources of my support. I had, in my gratitude, drawn a sharp, clear line, and the Everhart name was, by its public omission, on the other side of it. But most of all, the credit belongs to the students. I looked directly at the live feed camera, the one broadcasting to the big screens. I was not speaking to the room anymore. I was speaking to my kids, who I knew were watching a grainy live stream back at the studio. You did this, I said, my voice softening just a fraction, becoming the voice I used in the classroom. Javier, Maya, Luis, you did this yourselves. You built the robots. You wrote the code. You solved the equations. I just turned on the lights. I took a breath. This was the moment. I lifted my gaze from the podium and I scanned the room. I did it slowly, deliberately. I looked at the tables on the left. I looked at the tables in the center. And then, I let my eyes pass over table number 1. It was not a glare. It was not a confrontation. It was a glance. It was the same amount of attention I gave table number 2 and table number 3. I simply registered them. I saw it all. in that 1-second sweep. I saw Logan. He was pale, his mouth slightly open, his face a perfect mask of confusion. This was not on the spreadsheet. This was not part of the plan. I saw Graham. His hands were on the table. He was tapping, his right index finger, tapping, tapping, tapping on the white linen, next to his water glass. It was the gesture I knew from my childhood. It was the gesture that meant a multi-million-dollar deal was collapsing. It was the gesture of a man who had lost control and was waiting, desperately, for a phone call, for someone to tell him what to do. And I saw Marla. She was rigid. She was not just still. She was frozen. Her smile, the one she had practiced for the photographers, was cemented on her face, but it was grotesque. It was a rictus of social terror. Her eyes were fixed on me, and they were not angry, not yet. They were something worse. They were calculating. She was a general whose fortress had just been breached by an invisible enemy, and she was, for the first time in her life, without a strategy. I held their gaze for no longer than a heartbeat, and then I moved on. I looked past them, to the back of the room, to where I knew my grandfather was sitting. I found him. He was sitting in the shadows near the sound booth. He was not on his feet. He was not clapping. He was just watching me, and as my eyes met his, he nodded. It was one single, deep, economical gesture. It was not the applause of a relative. It was the nod of an engineer. It was an acknowledgement. The structure is sound. The data is correct. The bridge will hold. That nod was my applause. It was the only one I needed. I turned my attention back to the microphone, back to the entire room. I had said my piece. I had presented my data. It was time to close the file. You do not need permission to create impact, I said, my voice ringing out in the suddenly vast silence. Just do the work. I did not say thank you. I stepped back from the podium. For 1 second, there was nothing, a beat of pure, stunned silence. And then the room exploded. It was not applause. It was a roar. The sound from before was polite. This was something raw, something genuine. People were not just standing. They were surging to their feet. I heard cheers. I heard whistling. It was loud, hoarse, and overwhelming. The MC was at my side, her eyes wide, her hand on my arm. I did not look at the audience. I turned, and on the monitors that lined the stage for the presenters, I saw the camera feed. The director was a genius. He was not on me. He was on them. The feed was a tight close-up of table number 1. It was all there for the entire ballroom to see. Graham, tapping, 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 his face ashen, Logan, staring at his plate like a man who had just been served a spider, and Marla, her face a mask of iron fury, her painted smile gone. She leaned in, past Logan's stunned face, toward Graham. Her lips moved, in the thunderous noise of the ovation. She could not be heard, but I could read her lips. I watched the monitor as she whispered, her eyes still locked on my back as I walked off stage. We have to pull her to our side, immediately. I stepped behind the curtain, into the darkness, as the MC, her voice breathless, finally took the stage and called for the third finalist. The applause for the third finalist, the Arts Collective, was polite and scattered. The room was distracted. The energy had shifted. The moment I stepped behind the curtain, I was no longer an anonymous presenter. I was a target. The darkness of the backstage area was not an escape. It was an exchange. Before my eyes had fully adjusted, a man in a tuxedo that was clearly too tight for him grasped my elbow. His grip was urgent. Ms. Hart, incredible, just incredible. I am the CTO of Ethelred Semiconductor, he said, his voice a low, fast buzz. He did not wait for me to respond. He was pressing a heavy, embossed business card into my hand. We have been looking for an education partner, a real one, not just a photo op. Your metrics, that 92%, that is engineering. We need to talk. My car is waiting. We can talk tonight. Before I could answer, a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and a striking red dress stepped directly in front of him, effectively blocking him. I am sure Ms. Hart is busy tonight. Gerald, she said, her voice smooth but absolute. She turned to me. Noel, I am Dr. Eris. I am the superintendent for the 3 counties north of here, Hayes, Williamson, and Travis. She was not offering a compliment. She was making a proposal. What you just presented, she said. The data, the scholarships, the methodology, that is a model. We have been trying to build a bridge to our tech corridors, and frankly, we have been failing. We have the funding. We just lack the program. She paused, her gaze intense. We want to fund a pilot program. We want to replicate Forge Pathways. Are you ready for that kind of scale? Are you ready to open in 3 other counties? The CTO, Gerald, was still at my elbow. A university president I recognized was standing just behind Dr. Eris, waiting his turn. They were not congratulating me. They were bidding. The polite, dismissive world of teacher's salary had evaporated in the 3 minutes I was on stage. I was no longer a cute hobby. I was a high-growth asset. The small crowd parted, not with a push, but as if by a sudden change in atmospheric pressure. My grandfather, Edmund Hart, emerged. He moved with a slow, deliberate economy that made the frantic energy of the others seem cheap. He did not congratulate me. He did not smile. He simply held out a cold, unopened bottle of still water. You are dehydrated, he stated, as if it were a diagnosis. You will need your voice. I took the bottle. The plastic was shockingly cold against my damp palm. It is a long day, he added, more to himself than to me. He stood beside me, not in front, not behind. He was not my protector. He was my witness. The calm lasted approximately 10 seconds. Noelle, darling, there you are. Marla arrived like a weather event. She was fast, her silver dress a shimmering, metallic blur as she cut through the superintendents and executives. Her PR smile was locked in place, a brilliant, hard, terrifying baring of teeth. It was a rictus of pure damage control. She reached for my arm, the one that still held the faint, yellowing bruise under my suit jacket. We have been looking everywhere. Her voice was a high, glittering weapon, designed to be overheard by the very important people she was interrupting. You must come back to the table. Right now, we are taking a family photo. The CTO and Dr. Eris instinctively recoiled, sensing a private, dangerous frequency. They stepped back, but they did not leave. They were watching. Marla leaned closer, her smile fixed, her eyes reptilian. Her manicured fingers dug into my sleeve. The photographers are waiting, she hissed, her voice now a low, furious whisper meant only for me. The family brand needs to show unity. We must control this narrative. Now, come along. I did not pull my arm away. I just did not move. I let her grip tighten. I looked at her, at the fixed smile, at the raw desperation thrumming underneath. No, I said. It was quiet, but absolute. Her smile faltered, a microsecond of a glitch. What? I am not available for a photo. I turned my head, pointedly, away from her and back to the superintendent. Dr. Eris, I said, my voice perfectly level, as if Marla were not there. I'm very interested in that pilot program. My new office is on South Lamar. Can we meet on Monday? Marla was stunned. I had just ignored her. Live, in front of a donor. She tugged my arm, a sharp, angry jerk. Noelle, this is not a request. You will come now. I turned back to her. I looked down at her white-knuckled hand on my sleeve. Then I looked up, into her face. I do not belong to your brand. Marla, I said, my voice as cold and clear as the water I was holding. I belong to my students. A new shadow fell over us. Graham had followed her. He was not smiling. His face was ashen. The same shocked gray pallor I had seen on the monitor. He was flanked by Logan, who just looked sick, his eyes darting around as if looking for an exit. Noelle, Graham said. He did not use Marla's loud, performative voice. His was a low, urgent growl. This was not a family dispute. This was a business negotiation, happening in an alley. This performance, he spat. It was impressive, but it stops now. You have made your point. I was not making a point, Graham. I was presenting my data. Fine, he hissed, his right index finger starting that familiar, rhythmic tap, tap, tap against his own leg. The deal was collapsing. He was losing control. You want funding? You want to be legitimate? Done. I will fund the whole thing. A blank check. Marla's eyes lit up. This, she understood, absorption. 500,000 a year, Graham continued, leaning in, his voice thick. Whatever you want, we will make you the biggest nonprofit in the state. I waited. One condition, he said, the trap springing. We put the Everhart Meridian logo on every classroom, on every press release. It becomes the Everhart STEM Initiative. It is our program. It is our narrative. There it was, the acquisition, the price for my silence, the price for my work, the cost of being seen. I looked at him, at my father, at the man who had sat silent while his wife threw metal at me for asking about a scholarship fund, at the man who had dismissed me as a teacher's salary. He was not offering to help me. He was offering to buy me. No, I said. Graham's head snapped back as if I had struck him. What? No, I said it again. I am not for sale. Forge Pathways is not for sale. You ungrateful! Logan, who had been vibrating with silent rage, finally lunged forward, his face a mottled purple. Do you have any idea what you are doing? You are embarrassing the family. You are making us look like fools in front of everyone. The family, I said, looking at Logan's contorted face, is perfectly capable of doing that on its own. Enough. The word was not loud. It was not shouted, but it was absolute. It cut through Logan's sputtered rage like a blade. My grandfather stepped forward. He was no longer a passive observer. He looked at Marla, at Graham, at Logan. He looked at them, one by one, with a cold, profound disappointment that was more terrifying than any anger. You are mistaken, Edmund said, his voice level. He was speaking to Graham. She is not embarrassing you. You are embarrassing yourselves. And then, in the most brutal dismissal I had ever witnessed, he turned his back on them completely. He walked past me, toward the MC, who was hovering near the stage entrance, nervously wringing her hands as she watched the family drama unfold. My grandfather reached into his inner suit jacket. Marla, what is that old man doing? Graham muttered, his authority evaporating. Edmund did not pull out a checkbook. He pulled out the heavy, sealed, cream-colored envelope. He handed it to the MC. My name is Edmund Hart, he said, his voice polite but carrying an unmistakable weight of command. I need you to deliver this document to the president of the Austin Alliance, immediately. He is at the head table. Tell him it is a supplemental document for the Civic Impact Award. The MC, her eyes wide, looked at the imposing envelope. Sir, she stammered, the award is about to be announced. The winner is... I understand, Edmund said, which is why it is urgent, right now. She took the envelope. She looked at Graham's furious face, at Marla's frozen one, and then at Edmund's immovable calm. She made a choice. She clutched the envelope and hurried away. A messenger on a battlefield, disappearing into the main ballroom. Marla was staring at Edmund's back. What did he do? Graham, what did he just do? What was that? My grandfather walked back to me. He ignored them as if they were furniture. He looked at me, and his eyes, for the first time, were not calm. They were filled with a quiet, controlled anger that was all for me. I despise violence, Noel, he said, his voice low. I especially despise violence that disguises itself as protocol. He meant the napkin ring. He meant the family brand. He meant the entire system of polite public degradation. We all watched. We saw the MC deliver the envelope to the Alliance president, a man named Marcus Thorne. We saw Marcus look at it, break the wax seal, and pull out the contents. We saw his eyes go wide. He read for no more than 10 seconds. Then he immediately stood up and signaled, frantically, to the technical director in the back of the room. He was making a change to the program. "He is interrupting the show," Marla whispered, her voice laced with a sudden, real panic. "This is not on the schedule." The confrontation had drawn attention. Dr. Aris and the CTO had backed away, but they were watching, and they were not the only ones. A woman at the adjacent table, the one who had recognized me, was whispering urgently to her dinner partner. She was glancing at Marla. Another man 2 tables over was doing the same. The story from the restaurant at Sedera, the one with 40 witnesses, the one where the teacher's salary daughter was assaulted with a piece of silverware and the rich old grandfather walked out in disgust. It was a secret that had been held in place by the thin membrane of social politeness. And that membrane had just been broken. The whispers were starting. The rumor was becoming data. Marla felt the shift in the room. She could feel the stares. Her face, which had been a mask of calculation, was now just a mask of fear. On stage, the MC was returning to the podium. She looked pale and visibly shaken. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice unsteady, the microphone picking up her tremor. We have a brief, unscheduled supplement to the program. Before we announce the winner of the Civic Impact Award, the MC, a woman who 5 minutes ago had been the picture of slick corporate professionalism, was now visibly struggling. She was looking at Marcus Thorne, the president of the Austin Alliance, who had walked onto the stage without an introduction. He was a tall, distinguished man who was not known for theatrics. Tonight, he looked pale and furious. He did not wait for the MC to introduce him. He walked directly to the podium and adjusted the microphone, his hand shaking slightly. The MC, dismissed, backed away. The ballroom, which had been buzzing with the fallout from my speech, fell into a deep, confused, and terrified silence. This was not on the program. "Good evening," Marcus Thorne said, his voice amplified, filling every corner of the room. It was tight, controlled, and vibrating with an anger that was clearly costing him a great deal to manage. "We are, of course, here tonight to celebrate our finalists and to announce the winner of the Civic Impact Award." He paused and looked down at the paper in his hand. It was, I knew, the contents of my grandfather's envelope. "However," he continued, "a moment ago, I received a supplemental document from an honorary fellow of this alliance, Mr. Edmund Hart." He gestured, not to table number 1, but to the shadows at the back of the room. Backstage, Marla, Graham, and Logan were frozen, watching. "What did he do?" Graham whispered, his voice hoarse. "What did he give him?" "Mr. Hart," the president continued, "has requested 60 seconds to make an announcement that the Alliance, having just reviewed its contents, fully and unequivocally endorses." A spotlight, which had been programmed to find Graham Everhart all night, swung wildly, searching, and then found my grandfather. He was already walking, moving from the darkness of the back tables, down the main aisle, toward the stage. He was not supposed to be on that stage. This was Graham's night. This was the Everhart show. My grandfather, in his quiet, dark suit, looked almost tiny as he climbed the steps, but the 500 people in the room watched him with an intensity they had not given anyone else. He reached the podium. He did not look at Marcus Thorne. He looked out at the audience. He did not speak about my speech. He did not speak about me. He did not, ever, speak about family. He spoke about something else. "Dignity," he said. His voice was not a performer's. It was the voice of a man stating a fact, like an engineer reading a specification. It is not a complicated word. It means that a person's worth is inherent. It is not a line item on a budget. He looked, just for a moment, toward table number 1. "Philanthropy," he continued, "is not a prop. It is not a tool for branding. It is not a way to wash a reputation. It is a simple mechanism for transferring resources to those who have talent, but not opportunity. And children. Children are never a backdrop. They are the entire point. Graham, from where I stood, looked like he had been punched. Marla's hands were gripping the table linen, her knuckles white. "Tonight," my grandfather said, "I have been reminded that these principles need to be defended, not just with words, but with structure." He looked at Marcus Thorne. "On behalf of the Hart family, I am announcing the creation of the Hart Forge Endowment." The room inhaled. Hart, not Everhart. "This is a binding, 3-year, fully funded endowment for the complete operational costs of the Forge Pathways program." The room, a collection of the richest people in Texas, was utterly, profoundly silent. They were not listening to a speech. They were listening to the sound of millions of dollars moving. "This endowment," Edmund continued, his voice precise, "comes with 3 conditions. 1. There will be no logos, not mine, not anyone's. The work is the brand. 2. There are no public relations requirements. The mentors will not be pulled from their classrooms for photo ops. The students will not be props. 3. The endowment is contingent on the adoption, in full, of a new standard of care, to protect its staff and its students from any and all forms of corporate or personal coercion." He had done it. He had created a fortress of capital around me. He had not just given me money, he had given me armor. The room did not applaud, it detonated. It was not the emotional cheer I had received. This was something different. This was the sound of power acknowledging power. It was an explosion of respect. The press photographers, who had been lingering in the back, surged forward, their flashes blinding, creating a wall of strobe lights. They were not taking pictures of me. They were taking pictures of my grandfather, the quiet old man who had just rewritten the script of the entire evening. My grandfather, his 60 seconds over, simply nodded to the podium and walked off the stage. The MC, looking like she was about to faint, rushed back to the podium. She was holding the winner's envelope. And now, the moment we have been waiting for, the winner of the $250,000 Austin Alliance Civic Impact Award. She fumbled with the card. The winner is Forge Pathways, Noelle Hart. The applause surged again, a wave upon a wave. I walked back out, into the lights, my legs shaking. I was handed the award. It was a heavy, abstract crystal, cold and sharp. I held it. I was in a daze. But the show was not over. As I stood there, holding the award, the main screens, which should have been showing my logo, flickered. They changed. A new slide appeared, white text on a black background. It read, "The Hart Code of Conduct." Marcus Thorne was at the podium again. "As a condition of Mr. Hart's generous endowment, and as a new standard for this alliance, we are making this code public." The slide changed. A single sentence was highlighted. "This code prohibits any partner, donor, or representative from engaging in any act of public humiliation, verbal or physical, against a colleague or grantee, especially any act committed in the name of brand protocol." Backstage, Marla went from white to a deep, mottled red. She knew. She understood. The whispers at table number 1 were no longer whispers. I could see the woman who had been at the restaurant at Sedera, the one who had seen the napkin ring. She was talking, animated, to her entire table, and she was pointing. She was pointing at Marla. I finally understood. My grandfather's sealed envelope had not just been the endowment offer, it had been the proof. It had been a copy of the security footage from the restaurant. It had been the signed, notarized testimony from the restaurant manager. He had not just told Marcus Thorne, he had shown him. He had given the president of the Austin Alliance a dossier on the behavior of his platinum sponsor. Brand protocol. He had used their own language against them. Graham saw the pointing. He saw the stares. His entire legacy, his night of triumph, was collapsing into a public relations nightmare. He pushed his chair back. He stood up, his hand raised, as if to clarify a point in a board meeting. "Marcus!" he called out, his voice a desperate, cracking sound. But the MC was a professional. She had her orders. She smoothly, brightly, spoke over him. And now, please join me in welcoming to the stage the incredible, hard-working mentors from Forge Pathways. Graham was left standing, his hand in the air, a man trying to hail a cab that had already passed him. He was cut off. He was irrelevant. I looked down. Logan was staring at his phone, his face the color of old paper. He had just received a text. He showed it to his father. Graham's hand, the one that had been in the air, fell to his side. He sank back into his chair. A man hollowed out. I knew, as surely as I was standing there, that the Lake Haven investor had just pulled out, citing a crisis of confidence in leadership culture. I clutched the heavy crystal award. I was not looking at them. I was not looking at anyone. I saw a small, folded note, the same paper as the one from his envelope, tucked into the base of the award. My grandfather must have given it to the MC when he gave her the envelope. I pulled it free. My hands were shaking. I unfolded it. It was his sharp, architectural handwriting. It was not a congratulations. It was a single sentence. You do not need an apology to do what is right, but justice has many forms. I closed my hand around the note. Backstage, in the shadows, I saw Marla. She was not crying. She was not defeated. She was watching me, her eyes 2 chips of ice. She leaned into Graham, her hand gripping his shoulder, her nails digging in. She said something to him, too low for me to hear, but her lips were clear. This night, she seethed, is not over. I was still on the stage, the heavy crystal in my hand, when the mentors I had hired, the ones who were working for almost nothing in a church basement, came out. The applause for them was genuine and warm, but the night was fractured. The energy was nervous. The gala was over. But the reckoning had just begun. In the grand foyer, as the 500 guests began to filter out, the air was thick with whispers. The confrontation I had fled backstage simply relocated. They were waiting for me by the main doors, a 3-person blockade of desperation. Graham, Marla, and Logan. They looked, for the first time in their lives, small. Noel, Graham's voice was a rasp. He was trying to project authority, but he was a king whose throne had just been dismantled in front of his court. We need to fix this. We are going to fix this, now. I stopped. I held the crystal award. It felt heavier than it looked. You made your point, he continued, attempting a tone of magnanimous negotiation. It was a very effective statement. Now, we bring it back home. I'm canceling my father-in-law's stunt. I am offering you a real endowment, a substantial one, twice what he offered. We will announce it tomorrow. A joint press conference, the Everhart Heart Foundation. Marla nodded, her eyes bright and feverish. She saw the path back. It is the perfect narrative, she cut in, her voice regaining its PR cadence. A family uniting for the good of the city. We stand together. We put our name on the front page, all of us, together. They were still trying to buy it. They were still trying to absorb me, to make my work their asset, to turn my victory into their redemption. They were offering me a blank check in exchange for my name, my compliance, and my silence. I looked at my father, at the man who had let me be dismissed, belittled, and assaulted. No, I said. Graham looked stunned. What do you mean? No. I am offering you everything. What do you want? Just name your price. I do not want your money, Graham, I said, my voice quiet. The foyer was emptying, but a few people lingered, watching. I have funding. I want an apology. He almost laughed in relief. This was easy. This was something he could do. Fine. I am sorry. I apologize. For everything. Now, my assistant will call you in the morning to draft the statement. Not to me, I interrupted. He stopped. What? You do not apologize to me. You want to talk to me? You want to unite this family? You apologize publicly. You will book the private room at Sedera. You will invite the same 40 guests who were at that dinner, and you will stand up, in front of them, and you will publicly apologize for using violence and humiliation to silence a guest in your home." Graham's face went white. Logan just stared. Marla was the one who found her voice. It was a high, thin shriek. "That is insane. You are blackmailing us. That is emotional blackmail." "No, it is not." The voice came from the marble staircase just behind me. Edmund. He was standing on the landing, his overcoat folded neatly over his arm, as if he were simply waiting for his car. He looked down at the three of them. "She is not blackmailing you, Marla," my grandfather said, his voice calm and resonant in the marble hall. "She is stating her terms of business. You, of all people, should understand that. She is setting a boundary. The price is clear." He looked at me. "Your car is waiting. Noelle, it has been a long night." I looked at Graham, at his face, torn between rage and the horrifying, unfamiliar feeling of powerlessness. I looked at Marla, who was vibrating with a hatred so pure it was almost visible. Then I turned, and I walked away. I left them standing in the foyer, in the ruins of their own night. The press release that hit the wires at 9 a.m. the next morning was not from Everhart Meridian Holdings. It was from the Austin Alliance. Austin Alliance and Hart Industries announced landmark Hart Forge endowment. It detailed the 3-year operational grant, and it specifically highlighted the key clauses. This endowment is provided on the condition of no corporate branding, no public relations requirements, and the adoption of the Hart Code of Conduct, ensuring the protection of all program staff and students. The second paragraph was just as important. Following the gala, the Austin Alliance is pleased to announce that Ethelred Semiconductor, Dr. Aris of the Hayes County School District, and 2 anonymous Austin-based tech firms have all pledged supplemental, multi-year partnerships, creating an unprecedented new financial and educational pipeline for the Forge Pathways program. The document was a public record of a new alliance. The name Everhart Meridian Holdings was not mentioned once. That same morning, the board of Everhart Meridian Holdings convened an emergency session. The subject, I later learned, was catastrophic reputational risk and leadership culture. The fallout was immediate and internal. Logan was quietly, very quietly, removed from his speaking slot at the upcoming Texas Real Estate Summit. Marla's role as Director of Community Engagement and Family Spokesperson was, according to the internal memo, temporarily suspended to allow her to focus on family matters. She was, in effect, fired from the job of being herself. The video of the napkin ring incident never went public. My grandfather, I found out, was not a monster. He was not a blackmailer. He was a surgeon. He sent exactly 2 copies of the file. The first went to the board of directors of Everhart Meridian Holdings, with a note. The second went to the CEO of the hospitality group that owned Sedera. His message was the same to both. This footage is provided not for public dissemination, but for your internal review. It is an example of a failure in protocol. Do not turn an act of violence into media content. Turn it into a lesson. This is what is happening under your brand. Fix it. It was a cold, corporate checkmate. I did not have time to watch their empire crumble. I had work to do. The money was real. The partnerships were real. 2 weeks later, I signed the lease on the second Forge Pathway Center. It was a bright, airy space in East Austin, in the very neighborhood the Lake Haven quarter had threatened to displace. My first act as an endowed executive director was to make 2 phone calls. I hired 2 new lead mentors. They were both brilliant women, former public school science teachers who had quit the profession, completely burned out by a system that demanded everything and gave them nothing. I hired them back. I gave them a real salary, full benefits, and a copy of the Hart Code of Conduct as their employment contract. I brought them back to the work they loved, but this time, I gave them armor. A month passed. Then, one Tuesday, an email appeared in my inbox. The sender was Graham Everhart. The subject line was blank. I opened it. The body of the email contained only 3 words. I was wrong. It was the first true thing he had said to me in a decade, It was a start, but it was private. It cost him nothing. It was an attempt to repair his conscience, not his actions. I waited a day, then I wrote back. Public humiliation requires a public repair. Apologize to the staff at Sedera for the scene you permitted. Apologize to Geraldine, the executive whose question you allowed to be met with violence. Apologize to the 40 people whose silence you accepted. When you have repaired the damage you did to them, we can talk. I did not receive a reply. The boundary held. The new center opened with the spring semester. It was chaotic, loud, and smelled of new paint, hot solder, and pizza. One afternoon, I was in the back, helping a team debug a line of code. When I looked up, my grandfather was standing in the doorway. He was just watching. He was not looking at me. He was watching Maya, the girl who had written me the card, as she confidently explained a parallel circuit to a group of new, younger students. The room was flooded with light, much of it coming from the students' own LED experiments. He stood there for a long time. I finally walked over to him, standing beside him in the doorway. "It is nice light in this room," he said, his voice quiet. I smiled. "It is. They wired it themselves." He nodded. Once, the engineer's approval. That was enough. This was not revenge, not the fiery, satisfying kind you see in movies. It was quieter, and it was colder. It was the establishment of a new order. It was the simple, irreversible transfer of power from a brand to a fact. The gala was not an end. It was a beginning. My work was no longer a hobby. It was an institution. The last thing I did in the new studio was hang 2 items on the wall, side by side. On the left, I framed the simple, 2-page heart code of conduct. On the right, I framed the small, dog-eared index card, the one I had carried in my pocket. "Ms. Hart, you made me believe I was smart." I hung them right next to the Crystal Award. I did not need the Everharts, or anyone, to see me anymore. The city, and my students, already had. Thank you for listening to my story. Please comment below and let me know where in the world you are listening from. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and tap the like button and the notification bell so this story can be heard by more people.